really, we've done, the trauma things, right? You're like all in, you can't stop thinking about it. It's all you know, it's all you can see, or you're working really hard to pretend it never happened, avoid talking about it, go around it, all of those things.
Thank you.
All right, so.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay,
yes.
I just wanted to make sure. All right,
Great.
thank you.
Great.
I'm here to learn too.
So. We're so glad. And Anna was happy to know that there were some people that identified as Indigenous coming today. So as it is 12:04, I am so thrilled and proud and in awe to introduce you to my friend Anna Soole. Anna's up in Canada. She's a Métis descendant. Current, like how?
Métis. I'm Métis.
Métis. She's Métis.
Yeah.
And doesn't it sound just as beautiful as she is? And because she's in Canada, this is something that she's spending a lot of time talking and thinking about. But I know for US audiences, I feel like I know myself, grew up with the fairy tale of Native American people and settlers, colonists coming in. And the fairy tale of it is, it was this beautiful bringing together, and they had this great feast and everyone was happy and gratitude, and that really sort of benign, happy little framing of it. And certainly that's probably what many people here got for framing around our holiday. And yet, sort of the older I get and the more I realize, the more I think about trauma, the more I think about coming to terms with really painful things. This one's gigantic. It's foundational. It's really, I think, I've learned so much from just talking to you about it in preparation of this, how many underlying assumptions about the way the world works of mine come from this viewpoint, this perspective. So I know that Anna is going to take us very beautifully, gracefully, and gently through what is probably going to be a difficult topic for all of us, even more so if you're impacted by this trauma directly. And I know people here, I know we all are impacted, but some more directly. So yeah, I think I'm gonna make sure if you're able to, please mute if you're not Anna. I am gonna be on chat duty, so I'll be checking out if there's anything that you wanna chat about. And Anna's not gonna watch chat, she's gonna do her things. But I told her I'll jump in if somebody needs to say something immediately. You're pretty comfortable with people just jumping in if there's a question, or would you rather have them save it?
I think that we can feel it out. Save it if it feels like the wrong time. Jump in if it feels like it's relevant.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think a lot of times you get a question and then the presentation will answer that. I just hadn't got there yet. So anything else? Anything I should say for people here, grounding, or just turn it on over? Turning it over to you, Anna, and I'm going to mute.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for that. Panse, Anna Soole de Shinnikashin. It's so good to be here with all of you, and I'm so honored to be holding this space and to be invited by Amy. And yeah. Oh, it's weird to not be able to. Can I see everybody? Is it possible for me to still see it? Can I stay in the group? I'm not in the group anymore. I don't know how to. There we go. That's better. Thank you. So part of the reason that I actually want to be able to see everyone is because if we were in person, I would have asked us to be seated in a circle, because in my culture, that's the way we do things. And so being able to see each other reminds us that we are all equal. Our voices are all important, and I'm not the person with the most important thing to say here. I've been invited to hold this space and to share some of the things that I've learned in my life, and it's a true honor to share some of those things with you. And I know that you are going to have so much to share with the group and with me as well. So I'm really I'm so happy to be here. I'm so thankful to get to meet all of you like across the continent of Turtle Island. Like, I'm just amazed. It's really cool. So I want to start by recognizing that I am on the stolen, occupied, unceded land, unsurrendered land of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Stalo First Nations people. Musqueam, Squamish. Yes. Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Stalo First Nations people. I don't belong to these lands. I was born in Sinext homelands, which is known as Nelson colonially in British Columbia, so-called Canada. And the lands that I'm on here are so-called Vancouver, Canada, so-called. But it's all just an idea. It's not the land itself, Canada, Vancouver, all of those things, the US. They're just an idea that belongs to certain people and not everyone. And because it's just an idea, that those ideas can be transformed. They can be challenged. They can be dismantled. They can be changed. And the truth is they need to be, because a lot of the time you'll hear people say, like, the system is broken. It's not broken. It was built that way. So I want to recognize the people that belong to the lands that I'm on. And I want to recognize the plants and the animals and the waterways and the ecosystems that belong here. And I want to recognize that the building that I'm in, that I live in, doesn't have permission to be here from the people and the plants and the animals and the ecosystems. Doesn't have permission to be here. And it's not in right relationship with those who do belong here and who have been here since time immemorial, tens of thousands of years at the very least. And Canada, so-called, has only been here for 150 years. I don't know how old the US is, but is it like 500 years or 400 years-ish, right? Something like that. That's not very long, you know? Oh, 200 years. Oh, that's even less. Right. Yeah. So thank you, Amy. 1776. So that's pretty short amount of time in the scheme of things, if you think about it. And I want to recognize that the lives that belong here are still here. The people are still where you are. The plants and the animals are still where you are. Even if they have been like decimated in certain areas, they're still there. Even under the surface, there's waterways under your streets. And those memories are still there. And that ancestry, that history, that memory will continue forward until all of this is gone, because this is temporary. This is temporary, and it unfortunately becoming more and more temporary. So I want to recognize all of the people that belong here, all of the lives that belong here and belong where you are, wherever you are. And I also want to recognize my own ancestors and the relationships that I have, my teachers, my family, the people who have helped me to come to the understandings that I'm at, the youth in my life who teach me so much, the elders. And I want to recognize, like I said, my ancestors who are always with me, who are really with me today. And whenever we're in circle, which we can sort of pretend we're in circle if we can all see each other, we're in ceremony. So I want to thank you for being here together in ceremony to understand something that is very hard and painful to talk about, but is essential. And it is underneath and around every single thing we do. There's no escaping it. And if you're Indigenous, you know that already because you live it every day. And if you're a settler, or if you have been brought here, your ancestors have been brought here against your will, or if you're here because of colonialism in your homelands, because you didn't have a choice, you understand And I want to invite you to share a little bit about what you're learning, what you want to learn. Not yet, but soon. And I want to say also, I want to recognize all of the relationships that we all have with everything in the universe, because we are literally related to everything in creation. Our bodies are made of the same chemistry as the stars. So I want to invite us to recognize our relationship with everything, that we are all interconnected, and that what we say and what we do matters. How we move through this world matters, and it is not in isolation, even though the colonial system would have us believe that. And I want to recognize your ancestors and each of you as individuals. I want to say thank you for being here. And I want to recognize also, whenever I'm in circle with people, I like to imagine there's this wall of ancestors around us. Like, your ancestors are always with you, and they know who you are, even if you don't know who they are. And there's no accident that we're here together. So I recognize you, and I thank you. Thank you for sharing this space with me. And I also want to recognize each of you as my relatives, because we all come from the same single-celled organism to begin with, but also because our relations really aren't that far apart, no matter where we come from in the world. So hi, cousin, it's nice to meet you. And I also want to recognize that some of us have unwell ancestors that we may feel uncomfortable considering. And I want to lift my hands up to the well ancestors who are here with us, and for protection, to ask them for protection, and also to remember that we are of our ancestors, but we are not our ancestors. We are ourselves. So I recognize you as you. Thank you. So all that to say, hello, everybody. It's so good to see you. How is everyone doing this morning? And I would like to ask if there are Indigenous folks in the room who want to speak first, or want to speak to the lands that you belong to, or anything that you want to bring forth. I would like to just open the floor up at this time for you to speak.
I was going to wait on everyone else to speak. Hi. My English name is Rhonda Hicks, and I'm not doing too good right now. I just got back for the Leonard Peltier March in DC, and I've been having a hard time. ICWA's on the table right now, and I've been dealing with it here with no help. So, as Indigenous, when we're federal, we got to go straight to the federal. There's no protocol, so, and they're threatening, they took our reservation back in Oklahoma. I'm from Oklahoma. I'm Muskogee and Cherokee, straight down the middle. All my family has been to residential schools that are, my mom and all them, and I'm learning a lot of stuff. Honestly, I was raised half on the res, half military life. I went to high school in Nuremberg, Germany, which I was more appreciated there in Germany than America. I mean, they love the Native Americans over there. So to come back to this country, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to come here. I didn't, because I knew we'd get treated like we were no one again,
Exactly.
But I'm actually speaking out because I am getting ready to become a member of AIM. So they got a chapter they're starting here in one town over. I'm glad I went there. So we're going to have to make more noise. We're going to be louder, because sometimes, and I tell people this, sometimes you have to get a misdemeanor for the greater good, especially when it comes to kids. So I don't back down. I got my mom's ashes here. I'm trying to afford to be able to go to Cherokee, North Carolina to spread them, but she's been here with me. She's been here. She's already entered my dreams. So I'm not stopping, and I'm ready to also take on the school committee in this state about the lives of the 5 civilized tribes. Mine were 2. We didn't like each other back then, but it's time for the truth, and I'm not going to back down. And I got my grandson getting ready to age out of foster care with the truth. He's ready for it too. And I'm like, you don't got to worry about me. You got to worry about a kid that's autistic, that's getting ready to throw it down. So thank you for letting me speak. I'm a communicator. There's so much to be done. So much. And I'm going to try to help this Generation Z, just lead them, I mean, just help them. They lead, and I'll be right there, and that's all I'm going to do, But thank you.
All my relations. Hi. Thank you. Is there anyone else is anyone else of Indigenous ancestry that would like to speak? You don't have to. I just want to open that floor up first.
I'll take a shot. I have Blackfoot and Cherokee roots that I'm probably the closest to of all my roots. The ones that we know of, at least, are Dutch, Afro-American, Indian, and the only ones that I feel very connected to the water, the earth, the air, the land, things like that. Whereas I don't, relate to colonized religion and other things like that. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Hi. No pressure. It's just if you want to.
Maybe we're disappearing, remember?
Yeah. Actually, thanks for saying that, because that isn't true. It's not true.
It is true. It is true. I'm talking about the ones that the government and everyone in America is still ignoring. We feel like we already are.
Exactly. We're being disappeared. We are not disappearing. We are here. We are here. We are strong, and we have.
I'm talking about numbers. Honestly, just percentage wise, what are we? 6.0 out of 100.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, because over 100 million Indigenous people have been basically.
I still have to send money to my family. My grandma just got running water in 1980. It's not. People don't understand this water thing is serious.
No,
They need to wake up. They need to wake up. Yeah. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Well, I want this to be there's so much that everyone's voices can bring. So I want this to be a space for people to share. And in fact, since it's a smaller group, I think I'm going to do what I usually do. First, I'll introduce myself a little bit, and then I'm going to ask if you'd be willing to introduce yourselves a little bit. Because in my culture, when we're in circle, we introduce who we are. It's in part to recognize who we're related to, where we come from, and who we are in relationship with now. So I would like to start by saying, again, Tanchi Anna Soole de Shinekeshun. Hello, my name is Anna Soole. And my maternal ancestry is Red River Métis, from the original Red River settlement in so-called Canada. Our ancestry is Anishinaabeg. It is Nehiyah, known as Cree and Ojibwe. Also, I have some Lakota ancestry that I'm not connected with. I don't have connections with those relations. And I'm also French, Celtic, Gaelic, Welsh, so from the British Isles, basically, and some German ancestry as well. And I was raised with the understanding that my paternal grandmother was Iroquois, and she was, except she's not my grandmother. So it turned out that I am an NPE, a not parent expected person, found out that I have a different parentage than I believed I did. And that's actually interconnected with being Indigenous in a colonial genocidal state where the parenting line was disrupted when my grandmother was sent to day school. In the US, you have boarding schools. We have residential schools here. And we're going to talk a bit about that today. But the parenting line in my family was disrupted, and the ability to care for one another was we were through, there was trauma, right? There was a lot of trauma. And so I was raised with the wrong father, basically. So I grew up with the understanding that I was Indigenous on both sides. And I later found out, surprise, surprise, my biological father is Irish. So that's a little bit about my ancestry. I can share a bit more later, but I go by they, them pronouns, but also she, her is okay with me. But if you use they, them, I would appreciate it. I also want to let you know I have a diagnosis of ADHD. And so sometimes I get overwhelmed if there's too many sounds coming from one place. So I can tell this is going to be a respectful group. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people interrupting all over the place, but that's also partly why I'm not going to be reading the chat, because I just can't do the task switching. My brain just doesn't do that. It's also related to the trauma that I've experienced in my life. You know, ADHD and trauma, you know, some people have like neurodivergence and then interconnecting with trauma. It's related. There's a lot of ADHD in the Indigenous community. But also we make the best hunters, FYI. So my name, my pronouns, bit of my ancestry, and my access needs. Those are the things that I always share. It helps people to know who I am. And I would like to ask you to share those things if you decide to introduce yourself. Also, just a little bit about my name. Anna means graceful. Kiara, my middle name, means clear. And Soole is the Celtic goddess of the sacred waters at Bath that were colonized by the Romans. So one of the first, if you want to go all the way back to one of the places where colonization really has its roots, although it's before that, Bath in the UK was a sacred place for Celts, and the Romans turned it into bath. It's called Bath because it's Roman bathhouses now. Like the sacred waters have been turned into bathhouses. And so we can think about it, colonization, like, I think of it as like a many-headed snake that kind of like got its like grip in the UK by and large, and other places in the world, of course, but then it like kind of branched out all over, and we're all colonized. We are all colonized. If we exist today, we're colonized. So this is, decolonization is work for Indigenous people and everyone, right? It is for everyone because we've all been colonized. And if you don't know your ancestry, if you don't know where you come from, that's not an accident. It's by design, because the colonial state requires us not to know. So if you don't know, I don't want you to like beat yourself up, but I also want to let you know that actually, if you don't know whose land you're on, also, there are ways to find out. So I'm going to ask you, if you do introduce yourself, to share like where your ancestors are from and whose land you're on. And something to think about is, whose land was your grandmother born on? And if you don't know, that's something to consider. Why don't we know? And how can we find out? Also, if you would like to share a little bit about your own relationship to colonization and why you're here today, that would be really wonderful. So before we do that, now that you know a little bit about me, now that you know a little bit about what we're doing today, I want to ask you for your permission, and you don't have to give it, because obviously you never have to give permission for something unless it's your truth. Would you be willing? I know that we're here sort of consensually because we're here by choice, but would you be willing to allow me to be in this position for the next couple of hours, the position where I'm holding space and I'm guiding us through a conversation in a sort of leadership? But I don't mean colonial leadership, because I think colonial leadership kind of looks like this. And Indigenous, I don't even know if the word leadership works in Indigenous culture, but Indigenous leadership is in service. It's more like this. It's like, how can I be in service to you? So my request is, would you be willing to allow me to hold this position today? And if not, that's okay. So you can either like twinkle your fingers or put a heart, or if I see somebody not agreeing, I'll check in with you. Or if you want to just say no, then we can like have a conversation about that. And I really mean it. You can always revoke your consent too, of course. Thank you. I think everybody agreed. Is there anybody who's like, no, it's okay if that's true? Okay. I think we're good. Thank you so much. So before we go on, raise your hand if you have never been asked for permission from somebody in a position like this before. Thank you. And what is it like to be asked?
I feel
How
like
does it
it
feel?
really shifts the power dynamics for me.
Would you be willing to elaborate on that?
I guess kind of like what you said in colonial leadership, it feel like there's this natural feeling that the facilitator or that's even maybe not even the word that you would identify to use yourself for yourself right now, but that's kind of what the assumption is, I guess. So it's kind of that facilitator holds the power. And so like you asking that question really kind of balances our power too, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad. Anyone else?
I would like to say, I think it feels like opening. I know a lot of spaces people say, oh, you should be coming to this conversation with your open hearts, open minds, but then not a lot of people actually realize how to do that. And I think that by you just asking if we allow you to be in that guiding space, it just like literally opens up my heart and mind towards whatever the conversation leads us.
That opens my heart. Thank you. That feels good to hear. Thank you. And I hope that that's the case for a lot of people. Anyone else want to share?
Just that I think it adds to a statement that you made earlier on where you prefer to have events like this in a circle. A lot of the work that I've done in the past, like working in critical incident stress teams that are made up of police, fire, and paramedics to talk about their troubles and their issues after a certain kind of call, it's purposely done in a circle so that there is not one person speaking to the rest, or the rest can't see each other because they're sitting in rows and things like that. And that just always opens up the ability for everyone to feel an equal part of the whole.
That's cool. I never would have known that about the organizations and the groups that you said that about. Like, that's cool that exists. That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, when we're in circle, there's one thing we can all do. We can all anybody? We can all
See each other?
we can all see each other. And if we, I mean, I know not everybody is on camera right now, and that's totally okay. But when we are, we can see each other, and seeing each other means that we are responsible to one another, and we are responsible to the group. And there is that sense of connection, that sense of connectedness. So I would really like to invite folks to share, and you don't have to. So share as much or as little as you'd like. I don't know if Amy, I'll just put it in the chat quickly. Just like your name and a short story about your name. So like, it could just be like.
I got that in. I can do that.
Okay,
well,
thank
you
you.
already did it.
No, but there's more. There's more. So name and a short story about your name. So like, my name is this, don't pronounce it this way. Or my name is this, I was named after this person. So I shared my name, Anna Kira Soole, and then I shared a little bit about like the Roman bathhouses being like a colonial feature in the UK that spread out, right? You could share something like that, but obviously we want to be mindful of everyone's time. So let's try to keep it as concise as possible. If you have pronouns or excuse me, if you are comfortable sharing your pronouns, that would be ideal because I don't know what your pronouns are. I'm going to use they, them, theirs unless I know what your pronouns are. And I would invite folks to consider doing that if you haven't done that before. My identity in terms of gender is complex. I don't identify with colonial notions of womanhood, although I recognize that I was assigned to be a woman or girl at birth, and I kind of fit, but also I don't really feel like I fit in any colonial notion of gender. And when we use the word, so in one of my languages, in Cree, the word for woman is iskuyu, which is not a noun, it's a verb, and it means through the fire, which I could totally relate to. I totally relate to that. And it also gives us a sense of how important language is and why the colonial state would want to remove language from children, remove Indigenous languages from communities in the beginning and continually, because the way we speak forms the way we think. And Indigenous languages are entirely rooted in nature. So for me, gender just doesn't work. So I use they, them, theirs, and I'm okay with she, her, hers. So your name and your pronouns. If you haven't thought about it before and you want to be like, I don't care, just use whatever you want, I would invite you to actually say the pronouns that you use so that it's not flippantly like dismissive of people who have to fight and work really hard for their pronouns. Does that make sense? Also, if you can share any access needs you have today. Is there anything that you really need us to know in order for you to be here in a good way? And if we can, while we're doing this, consider who isn't here because this space isn't accessible for them. That's important. Who can't be here because they don't have access to technology? Who can't be here because it's spoken in a colonial language and that language isn't accessible? If we were in person, who couldn't be here because the room isn't physically accessible? Maybe there's chemical scents, or maybe the doorknob is like not accessible, like it's like this instead of like a handle that's accessible for most bodies. We can think about all kinds of things like that, but think about what your access needs are. And then if you can share where you're from. And I don't just mean where you live, I mean, where are your ancestors, your people from? And if you don't know, that's okay. You don't have to answer it, and you can answer as much or as little of that as you want. But I will ask that people don't say I'm like 4th generation American or 3rd generation Canadian, because that's not what we're talking about. Canada and the US are colonial states of mind. They're not places. So let's invite into the space where our people are from. And that means where we have come from, how we ended up here together. And if you can also share like what your relationship is to colonialism, why you're here today. Now, I know this is a lot to ask people to share. You can share as much or as little, and not everybody has to share. And I've got the ego feather. I can't pass it to you, but I promise I would if we were in person.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Childs. I use she, her pronouns. I was born and raised on Cape Cod, but my family, my maternal side is Irish, Norwegian, and Scottish, and Italian. And my biological father's from Laos. He was a refugee from the Vietnam War. I have a similar kind of story as you, Anna. I didn't know my biological father for like who he truly was for a while. So my family actually told me that I was of Native American roots, and that's why I look the way that I do. So I actually spent a lot of my life growing up telling people that I was of Blackfoot descent, which was not accurate. So I just thought that was an interesting kind of little connection that we had there. I just bought my first house last year, and I bought it in Mashpee, so Mashpee Wampanoag land. I have a lot of very close friends that are tribal members. And I'm here today because I want to learn how to be a better ally to them. I actually run a trauma-informed after-school program on Cape for teenagers, ages 12 to 17. But a lot of my very close friends are tribal members, and just watching their struggle through the years of getting federal recognition and then that being taken back, and just learning the history of the town that I live in, because Mashpee started off as a reservation, and then basically it was just like the land was all systemically taken away from the people. And it was by design. And yeah, it's I loved that you asked if you could, lead the space. I felt like that was such a beautiful trauma lens that you had on right there, because working with traumatized youth, I'm constantly trying to be a guide rather than assert myself as in charge. So I love that. And yeah, thank you for doing this. Access needs, I'm gonna have to bounce out relatively soon, which I'm bummed out about because I gotta go start picking up kids. But I just learned about these trauma training Tuesdays, so I'm super excited to be here today.
I normally wouldn't interrupt the circle, but because you're going to leave, I really want to speak to what you just said. First of all, I would really love to connect with you, because finding out your different ancestry is whoa. So let's talk about that.
Let's do that.
If you're open to it. But also the other thing is that if you work with youth and you ask for their permission, we have to be prepared for people to actually say no.
Yeah.
Like, and really respect it. And so one of the ways that I do that is like, I invite when I'm working with youth, I'll be like, if the answer is no, but you want to stick around, you can just like sit in the background. And so then I just let them participate and like witness. And then they usually end up being the biggest participators usually. But also like if the answer is no from several, which is not that common, because usually everybody's so excited to be asked. But if it does happen, I will literally just spend the whole time talking with them about why and how, and allowing them to lead that process. I just wanted to offer that in case you wanted to use that, because it's a very it's really important to me for it to be a real question. And in a school, especially if we're in a school, they're forced to be there. So it's coercive. It's not really consent. So I try to speak to that too. I'm like, I know you're forced to be here. So I know that saying yes, you might feel like you have to, but I want you to know that in my heart, like, I'm not here to force you to do anything. Like, that's really important. Like, maybe you're forced, but I don't want to be a part of that. So just this is a couple of steps that I've had to learn throughout the years of doing this. So I wanted to offer it, since you said you were.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm kind of in a setting where the kids are a bit forced to be here. It is a DCF funded program, so their social workers will refer them. But I do always try to leave space for choices as much as possible. Sometimes I give them choices that will mostly benefit them, and it's like what I want them to do, because there's a lot of task oriented stuff that we have to get done. But yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Anyone else who'd like to speak? It's your turn.
I'll just say there's so many good things in the chat. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump on in, but lots of people put really good stories in the chat about their name, about where they live and their ancestry. So And if you didn't know, you can save the chat to your computer with those 3 dots in the chat bar. But now people have their hands up, Anna, so I will zip it and let you talk to them.
Go ahead, please.
I am unmuted. Would you like me to go? Did I
there's a
step in
person-
front of anybody? Ruth, were you starting?
There's I don't know how to pronounce your name, and I'm so sorry. Venencia, is that correct?
It's
Had your hand
Venencia.
up first.
Okay.
Well, thanks. Yeah, so my name is Venencia or Veni. I go by she, they, a pronouns. I am from Texas. I'm not born from Texas, but my family is from Texas. I was raised in the Rio Grande Valley. I am second generation Mexican American. I have grown very assimilated being by the border, and now I live in Austin, Texas. And after 10 years, it was a huge cultural shift for me. And also in the last 5 years too, I've really have been the person in my family to start exploring my ancestral roots, specifically my indigenous roots. My abuela, my grandmother, she told me that that we have Aztec roots. So, and it's really hard to find that when there has been a lot of assimilation, and also my family's from Mexico, and there's a lot of barriers for me to find out more information. So this past year, and the last couple of years, actually, there's been a few people around my life that has invited me to a Mexica Danza group. And then this past year, it kind of happened again where that same group kind of came back into my life. And since April, I've been really exploring my Aztec roots, practicing Mexica Danza, and just really it's been a lot. It's been very heavy, but at the same time, it's been very I've been very grateful for it, and there's a lot of unlearning that I have to do. And I'm happy to have found a support system within my community here in Austin to grow and to learn about the knowledge that was taken from me, my family, and for others. So I appreciate being here in this space. Thank you for one of the people in this space to invite me here. And I'm truly honored to continue to learn, continue to unlearn, and to also, just continue to have that resistance of the colonization of this land that was taken from many tribes and indigenous peoples. So I thank y'all for having me be in this space, and I appreciate you, Anna, for having this space feel more like a circle, which I very much enjoy. So thank you all.
Okay, can I say something? My name, Wahaya, is actually a name my grandma gave me. She didn't speak any English. Our whole relationship was like caveman stuff because she would not teach us, neither would my mom, because of what they went through, and it's hard for me to talk about this. It really is. But I was taking care of her when she passed away, and she died of diabetes complications. She went into a stroke, and I was working at the casino, having to travel an hour each way in Oklahoma. That's not fun because you don't know what's going to fall, with the tornadoes. But it was hard. But I was there to hear her, just not understanding, but just hearing her pain. And if I would have known what I know now, I could have grabbed so many stories from her. And our stories are now coming out in small town Oklahoma. But we're not going to talk about it. They're not ever going to talk about it because it's also from the South. They are bringing in indoctrination like Jesus. And I have to tell them, you cannot be Trump supporters. You don't know our history. Trump was bad to us, But the residential stories, I'm having a hard time with them, big time, because I know why my dad was the way he was, and my mom and my cousins. We don't yell at each other. We just walk away. And now the truth is coming out because of Gen Z within our community. We have no other races but white and native. Who do you think we were treated like? And when I went to high school, I got expelled from a government high school in Nuremberg, Germany, because I was there for 4 years and my brother and sister left. I was the only native in that whole school. I got assaulted. I got beat up. I got called every name. And then when I came home out of military life, I wasn't even accepted because they called me an apple. So it was hard because I'm the one in my small town of 1,500 people that's calling out everyone because this is wrong. And the residential kids and the ICWA, like I said, this is just the government lying to you again. We don't own our reservations. Everyone thinks we do. Why do you think we're not off the starting line? They run everything. We don't own them. That's what a lot of people think. We don't all get cash payments. There's only 400,000 Cherokees within my tribe. And my other tribe, I think 80 that are registered. So that's why I speak up. I don't have time. I don't have another race to fight, to learn about. I'm trying to learn about Muskogee and Cherokee. I'm the last full blood in my lineage with my brothers and sisters. And my grandson, DCF, he's been in DCF. He thinks he's a Croaky Indian. They're violating ICWA. So this is why I'm so aggressive, because for my grandson, and I have to get louder, and I am. That's why I'm teaming up and becoming an AIM member, because that's the kind of crowd I need. Someone that just has had enough. Because only the Indigenous that are out there doing stuff knows what it's going like. But my grandma gave me that name because she said I howled. That means wolf in Cherokee. She said I howled for my food. So that's a really hard name. That's a really hard name for me to say sometimes without thinking about her. But I don't even know what to say. Like I said, they're doing a documentary on me, and I never knew how hard it was. But I'm bringing out the truth of my experience of being a native from another tribe in this area, because I got the Nipmunks even asking me for help. But it's sad because there's a lot of tribes that are fighting each other. So that's what I'm trying to do, is just get all of us Indigenous and allies together, and we actually need really, really loud voices. I'm a part of Mothers Out Front in Worcester, and they asked us what our superpower was as moms. And, like some of them said, guilt, when we speak, guilt, factual stuff. And I said, first of all, I'm not a mom, I'm a grandma. My grandson's going to be 17. Mine is annoyance. And I have helped pass bills in State House for ex-prisoners and foster kids. I will always speak on them. It's terrible. My family don't even know about the prison pipeline. We're number one in the state of ex-prisoners. So that's why I'm trying to learn what I have. And I've learned from a lot of people in the community about my own tribes that I didn't know, so it's just hard when you're federal tied. It is so hard. I wish I wasn't, to be honest. I wish I was not tied to the federal government. But anyways, thank you. I'm going to keep fighting. You're going to hear my voice. I'm trying to get CNN down here for real, for some major stuff. But I'm going to be at the Day of Mourning. So if anyone's going to be there, I'm there every year. Look for me because I'll be very loud. I'm the one that people think has a megaphone, but I don't. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. So I see Madeline has had your hand up very patiently for a very long time. Thank you so much. And also there was someone with short blonde hair and glasses who's no longer on the screen, but you put your hand up right at the beginning. I think I think you put your hand up first before Madeline, and I feel bad, Madeline, because you've been so, I don't know if it's Madeline or Madeline, but
I had it was Jazz and then Karen and then Madeline.
Okay, let's go with that order.
Yeah, there were definitely
backing. Okay, good. So Jazz, Karen, Madeline.
Okay, perfect. Hi guys, I'm Jazz Blair. I was born and raised here in Worcester, Mass, which is also Nipmunk land. My name is actually an olive flower. Not sure why I was named that. I also have ADHD and autism, so the neurospicy is very, very high. From my maternal side, my mom is from Ecuador, Guayaquil, which is I'm going to say it wrong, Montañino Juanvalica tribe. My paternal ancestry comes from Okinawa, Japan, and Scotland. And one of the reasons I joined this group was because first of all, I love the Trauma Training Tuesdays, but also because both sides of my family come from pretty high profile colonizers. And as a mixed kid, it's been really hard for me to find my own community or a community that would accept me for being mixed. So my goal is to, step away from that white savior trope that we follow, and to check those who are actively adding to our oppressive systems and our racist systems, as far as those who are in my communities, Latino, Asian, and Caucasian. And there was one other thing I was going to say, but I don't remember now. But thank you. I appreciate all of this.
Jazz, are you passing?
Yes, I will pass to Madeline.
I think Karen's next in the stack. That's
Hi.
what Amy
Yeah, I
had.
think someone was in front of me.
Karen's next, and then Madeline. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Riley McNary. She, her, hers. Access, ADS, ADHD with the H. So I will be off camera for this crew when I need to. Otherwise, I am a bit bouncy, so I can be a big distraction. And rather than trying to sit still, I'll move around as I need to. And that's why I share off camera. So my family history, we are settlers of Klamath Nation. And and I myself, homes that sit on both Tillamook and Nipmuc property, or like lands, indigenous lands. So West and East Coast. My family hails from Northern Ireland a long time ago on my mother's side, so much so that it's not worth mentioning. Like how far back, because we kind of don't have a good idea of that. But on my dad's side, much more recent, that would be my grandfather. I didn't grow up with any of that history from my grandfather, all from my father. So the last of sort of, I have a lot of, like interest sort of in this space, having grown up kind of around it. My understanding of culture, life, and land, and just loss. Absolute, like genocide is something I grew up with. My father is a fisheries biologist, and his last, like assignment when he was working was it was actually the Columbia River Basin Recovery Project. The Columbia River Basin was the Cooley Dam, and they removed all of the indigenous fishing, rights and properties. And his job was to reinstill those and to make that, to make sure that those treaties were honored and available. As in, you could actually fish for fish versus just tossing, a line, a net, or a plank, those, plank fishing styles in. So that's where I come from. I come with, a lot of understanding. I've spent time in the Southwest in Navajo Nation, again, environmental, causes, down there. And then for a period of time when I worked with homeless youth in Portland, Oregon, I was rather struck by what they couldn't access, to be honest. This is a major, and I don't know if this is the appropriate space to share this, but the thing that I would like to kind of impart to this group and some of what we think about is, our ability to maintain your identity and then access the United States government. You either give up who you are or you don't get to be, to be a recipient of anything else here. That is the banking, that is the health, that is the, and I was so stunned by the fact that, when you get push comes to shove, and as a settler of Klamath Nation, for which again, my father recognized as a very young person and went on to do some, some other works, but as a settler, understanding what I have, I struggle with access. ADHD, ADS is a hard one, folks, but not for nothing. I do not struggle with access to my world. Like, I'm not in between here or there. I don't have to live in Oklahoma, Wahia, in order for me to see a doctor or get a debit card. And that, and it really, some of the overwhelming access pieces for Indigenous folks. And, and thank you so much. I'm horrible with names, rats. Then, Benny, thank you, for sharing your your process, your access, and your healing, because it is stunning what is not available. And when it's not part of, I own a home on, on Nipmuc land, but there isn't anything around me that suggests that, that it's part of contemporary world for, for so many right now. Still, that's not really, I'm not coming up with the proper words of what I'm meaning to say, but I think I'm just, I think recognizing that we did a really good job of making this an invisible space for, for folks back in the day. So it is near and dear. We're learning how to manage, and that's why I'm here today, is to look at what those trauma spaces are. So I'm going to stop now and listen to how we can, how we can be, we can create better access back to worlds, learn from, and also for the folks that you just need to get out of their way, let them move. So thank you. And I pass to Madeline.
Thank you, Karen. So my name is Madeline. I am part of the Mormon settlement in the Salt Lake Valley. My grandparents, or my grandma, was sent here as like a very little girl from the United Kingdom. And then my dad's side, they came here as a family to join the Mormon settlement. And I live in the Salt Lake Valley, which is Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute land. I'm not totally well versed on this stuff, and so I'm trying to learn more, but yeah. So my pronouns are she, her, and I would say that my relationship to colonization has, it's kind of been this like snowball where I've been learning more, and I've just been noticing this major gap in what like the Indigenous people in my life are saying, and what like the white people are saying, and what they're not saying, more importantly. And I feel like I've been thinking a lot about this, and I really feel kind of abandoned and misled by like my white ancestors. And I think that colonization kind of, especially like religious colonization, militarization, these other different factors, capitalism, I think has kind of basically, I'll go back, sorry, I'm nervous. But basically I feel like sort of abandoned and misled by my ancestors. Like they had a very destructive relationship with the land and with people, And I'm interested in how our language has English is such a language of like objectification, and how we objectify like other people, women, animals, the land, to such a point that we're like separate beings. And yeah, I think that my ancestors were really misled by like ego and greed. And I'm interested in how this new generation, specifically like young white people who come from these different movements, can learn from Indigenous people to kind of start backtracking and healing what my ancestors did. And I'm also queer, and so I feel really disconnected from my family's traditions. And so I almost feel like I'm disconnected from the land because of my white ancestry destroying the land, disconnected from other people because I can't fit into the traditional patriarchal, traditions and roles that my family has upheld forever. And yeah, I have British ancestry and Swedish ancestry. So that is all.
I don't know your name, the person who next has your hand up. It just says the name of your phone, I think. But you're welcome to speak.
Hi, my name is Narissa, and I work for Worcester Justice Childhood Trauma. So a little bit about myself. So I am clearly a woman of color. My ancestors must have come from Africa at some point in time. And both of my parents were from down south. So my mother was Cherokee Indian on her mother's side, and her mother's last name was Freeman because she was free. There's a lot of people of color down south with the last name Freeman. Because when the slaves were freed, they took, the name Freeman. And my father was from North Carolina. His father was a Blackfoot Indian, but we have no documentation. My father's father left when he was an infant. So I don't even know like anything about, that side. So then you have me. I'm my mother's 8th child, and I was born and raised in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I was raised even differently than my older siblings. My mom came here and she got her bachelor's degree and bought a home. And luckily for me, she stopped beating kids. That's the thing to do down south, So I was raised a lot differently. But I wanted to talk about the Day of Thanks. So as a person of color, when you're a little kid and they're having a Thanksgiving pageant or whatever, they always make you be an Indian. And I just really never wanted to participate in Thanksgiving like that. And I was the only person of color in my elementary school. If there was anybody else that was a person of color, they lived in the same house as me. So I never enjoyed being the Indian. But Thanksgiving for people of color, it hurts. It's just a reminder of things that were done to us, and so blatantly in our face, constant reminder. And it hurts. Totally switching topics now, but I'm raising my grandchildren, and my grandson Drew, he's 9 now. But when he was playing football, we had to travel a lot. So, we played in Grafton, and Grafton has a lot of Nipmunks. That's like their area. It's not just like Worcester, it expanded, was a whole, just like this whole region, So he was playing against the team called Nipmunks. And I was just curious. I already knew I was going to be aggravated, but I kept an open mind. So I get there, excuse me, and the team, it was like all blonde hair, blue-eyed, not even any like dark brown hair or black hair. It was really odd. And I just kept thinking, it's really a shame that they're even like wearing the nipmunks on their jerseys. And I mean, you would think they would at least sponsor some nipmunk children to play on the team as well. But it was upsetting, kind of like how Thanksgiving is. So that's all I wanted to share. It's just another day. Excuse me. It's just another day that hurts. It's a constant reminder. I was never a fan of Columbus Day either. So when someone's like, Happy Columbus Day, I'm like, Happy Mass Murderer Day. May he burn in hell, but okay, that's a whole nother topic. But okay, thank you for letting me share.
That was so good. I just need to say that. Sorry to interrupt.
I love that. I love that ending. I love that whole conversation. It was great. I thank you so much for sharing, and everybody else. So my name is Saedi. This is going to sound like bragging, but unfortunately, my dad named me as such. It has nothing to do with the name Sadie. It just happens to have the same letters. And my dad actually used the name because the other way around, so backwards, is spelled out ideas, and he just loved for me to be a genius. So that's what he actually tried to manifest. No pressure on me whatsoever, but that's my name. I love my name very much. My last name is De La Rosa. It's a Spanish heritage name. And actually, I just realized I don't have my camera on now. So I am Black. I am originally from Dominican Republic, and I identify as a Black American to piss everyone off. So I tend to say that very much so because Hispanics get pissed, white people get pissed because they get so confused. Like, how can you be Black? You speak Spanish. So and sometimes even Black African Americans get confused as well, or because it feels like I'm denying their heritage, and I'm definitely not trying to do that at all. I'm trying to go. I do name it as such because we Dominicans are known for not calling ourselves, for actually deliberately denying that we're Black, and so I do the opposite, and that just brings me much more comfort in grounding in the understanding that I was raised Black. My parents are Black, our culture is Black AF. It's just what it is. I do come from a place that was colonized by Spanish people, and that brought Africans against their will to their land, to the land of Taínos. In my case, I think the people from Macorís, which was the cacique from the area at the time, during that time. And I love that back in the Dominican Republic, one learns a lot during history about the original people of the island, but one doesn't even take into consideration how much harm exists to this day in what everybody has had to live through. So, and what people then continue to do in Dominican Republic against Haitians and call it law. So, so it's just one of those things that I try to reconcile with, but it's impossible to, because it's so hard to see how much damage has been done and how much damage continues to be done for the name of progress. And it's really a complex relationship with advancing and what people think of as progress. I also sympathize a lot, and my husband is from Southern Africa, a country in Southern Africa. And I also have that issue of colonization hasn't stopped. It just has changed. And a lot of places are still experiencing devastating losses that of their people, of their land, of their resources, again, for the sake of progress. So I love to recognize that, because people tend to turn a blind eye to it because it's not in the news. People hear about war and mass murders, and then they think, oh, those people. But it's really something that it is present in the lives that in ways that people don't recognize, and is present in the lives of a lot of people that live in the United States right now and all over the world. So I appreciate very much my name, but recognize it has nothing to do with the original people that I may come from, that I have no idea about. But the fact that it was my dad who gave me my name, and even though De La Rosa comes with a lot of hurt from the Spanish side, I embrace it because it is a beautiful name, and I can push it forward with the sense that even though it is my name, it doesn't have anything to do with where I actually come from. So that is pretty much what I have to say with that. Thank you so much for holding the space.
We have about 45 minutes left, so we'll just take the 2 people that have their hands raised, and then we'll move along to what Anna. Oh, Jane, okay. We'll take the 3 people with their hands raised. Ruth, you were first. Thank you.
Hola. Good afternoon. I was very impressed with my former colleague. I'm also from the Dominican Republic. And this is my all. I'm American citizen, but this was my Dominican passport, where it says race. Dominicans, they don't put black. They call them Indio or white. And but I just wanted to share my experience. I was born in the Dominican Republic, was sent to live in New York City when I was 9 years old, and then became a US citizen many years later. But the racism in my country is so deep embedded. If you think about the history of what happened to Haitians in the Dominican Republic. And then we had the President Trujillo, who literally gave money to Hitler to buy Jews because he wanted to whiten the Dominican community. When I was studying that history, I thought to myself, these white Jews came to the Dominican Republic, and when they saw how racist and, Trujillo was just like Hitler, they fled. Many fled to Cuba and to other places. But my thing has been throughout is I never understood what we have to, as human being, when you ask me, well, I'm a human being. I'm not black, I'm not white, I'm a human being. And this is what, and then you talk about when the colonizers came to to this land, indigenous land. Imagine, the saying, you're in America, speak English. I have to laugh, Imagine if the indigenous community had said to Columbus, you're in my land, speak my land. Instead, they welcomed them while they robbed them of the land and took their citizenship and everything. This is what, what really breaks my heart, because I can't understand how even today, and today is even worse. I've been fighting in this city of Worcester, racial disparity against our community. And I'll just share these two things from Worcester that I started working in the first Spanish Center, and I used the Telegram and Gazette just to help the Latino community that was growing up. And then I realized that every time there was an arrest by a person with a Spanish name, the paper would print Puerto Rican arrested. And the name would be in bold letters. And I asked a reporter, I don't see you say British arrested, or why do you say Puerto Rican arrested? But then there was a time when there was a big arrest in one of the housing projects, like 10 people. 3 was Spanish name. The only name in bold letter was the Spanish name. My friend called the editors and made an appointment, and he brought me along, and I showed them. I said, this is what you do. This is why the white community in Worcester considers all Latino to be criminal, because you never publish anything positive about our community. And one of the editors became embarrassed and said to Father O'Farrell, he said, I'm sorry, I'm going to make sure that never happens. But I said to them, but the harm has already been done. And I say this because even as we look today in the Worcester Public School, the majority of students are Latino. And Latino students are suspended 85% higher than white students for doing similar infraction. So this is, the welcoming that we have in this country, I just, and just finally, I believe that the immigration policy in this country are the most racist. Former Trump, he didn't talk about building a wall between Canada and the US. No, between a cold Mexican criminals. This is ridiculous. The majority of undocumented in the United States were born in Europe and Canada, but you would never see them being subjected to the condition that Black and Latino are being. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But I keep praying that, somehow, life will change. And one of the reason why I continue to fight injustices, and I have to say this, along the way, I have found many white allies who have fought right along with us, and that gives me hope.
Thank you so much, Ruth. I'm so thankful that you spoke, and please never apologize ever, ever, ever again for sharing such potent truths. I just need to say that. I feel like Denise and then Jane, and then we will continue. I think that's the order.
Can I say something to Ruth real fast? It's just going to be a line. Osio tohi ju unali gagte yui. It means, hi, my friend. I love you in Cherokee.
Gracias. Thank you.
That's it.
Well, hi, everyone. My name is Denise. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I am first generation Cuban American. My mom's side of my mom's side of the family is from Spain originally. My colonizers, and my dad's side of the family is Afro-Cuban. My dad died when I was young, and growing up, my skin is very light skin, and my dad was half Black. But growing up, my lighter skin and my Spanish roots were always celebrated and prioritized. I don't know a lot about my dad's Afro-Cuban roots, and that part of my identity has always been very suppressed and not talked about. As Ruth and Saidi said, the very strong colorism and racism within the Latin communities. So the paler your skin, the more you're celebrated, right? So it's been yeah, I don't know what much to say. Like, that's kind of my relationship. I'm still learning more of my ancestry, you know, and I know that Cuba sits on, or Cuba is Taino land. So that is definitely something that I am interested to learn more about. But the Tainos, you know, were very much, I mean, they were eradicated like in the 1500s, right? So it's so much, so that's even further, like it's even, I don't know, further away in time. So it's harder, even harder to find any bit of that information for myself. So I don't know. I don't really have much else to say. My heart is so open, like listening to everyone's stories. I think I'm just feeling like a little like emotional and just like so much connection from everybody. So I just wanted to say that as well.
Hi, my name is Jane Kimani. Thank you, Emmy, for this forum. I've actually learned so much. I'm originally from Kenya, East Africa. And when I saw the invitation for every month we have the Trauma Tuesdays and the Trauma of Colonization, I was like, I was a little bit curious to find more about it. And for me, it's a journey. I'm learning so much and my mind is so open because coming into this country from Africa, I have a share of Kenya was colonized by the British. As probably a lot of you, when you were listening about the Queen actually became the Queen when she was in Kenya. And then she has to flew back after they died to become the Queen. And we have lived with the aftermath of colonization for years and years. Most of the land was grabbed and the system that was imposed, the education system and so many other things. And unfortunately, even after Kenya became independent, the colonization still continues. Right now, we are not really colonized by the British. When I went there early this year, I found out everything now belongs to China in Kenya. And then everyone all the young people are fleeing to the Arab countries, and the way they are treated, they are like slaves. And so these conversations continue. But also for me being here, I know so little about what is going on with the Native Americans, with the African Americans. And I might think because I'm Black, I fit in a certain area. And the other day, I'm in a class, and that class is only for Black students. It's a base class, Black addiction counseling education, and we are all Black. And the other day, there was such it kind of like a little bit of uproar whereby one of the African American sisters was like, "You Africans, you sold us here, and you sold us into slavery." And then as Africa, we were like, we didn't even know that history about it. And it's true. Some Africans from West Africa were actually selling their pharaoh, because even in Africa, there are some tribes that are mightier than others, and they were selling their fellow Africans for slavery. I did not know that history. So for me, it's a learning curve with a lot of humility, learning other people so I can be able to live amongst them with peace, and I'm open to learning even more. Thank you for the opportunity.
Jane, thank you so much for sharing. I actually feel emotional hearing what you're sharing. And when you said you were from Kenya, right? It brought tears to my eyes, because I know that history of the Queen, and I being like inaugurated at that time. And I feel like there's some kind of full circle power happening here, that you're the last person in the circle to speak. I feel really honored for your words. Thank you. And I feel a lot of anger right now too. I don't know if other people are feeling that, but I feel this fire. And I feel emotional. I feel tears. And I feel the power of this space that we have created. We have co-created together, and we are co-creating together. And the potential also of transformation that we hold together right now. I feel profoundly honored to have heard so many stories. And I know there were many stories that did not get shared. And I know they were just as potent and rich as the ones that got to speak. But to those of you who did speak, to those of you who did share, I don't know how to thank you, actually, because there were so many important voices, and there's nothing that I could offer also in my own work that is as important or as rich as what was created here together. So I feel really thankful. I really feel profound gratitude to be part of this with you. And I want to ask you all, now that we've shared, how many people here, you can just raise your hand, feel more connected with one another in a way that we didn't feel at the beginning necessarily? Yeah. So in my own work, doing anti-oppression work, decolonial work, I've been doing this work for over 20 years. I feel like the only way to change as a community, as a society in the world, is to be real, is to be vulnerable, and to share our stories, and to listen to each other, to understand each other. So the reason that I always start my work when I work with a group with a circle, with a talking circle, is partly cultural for me. And it's also because once we've gone there together, we are part of something, and I have, actually, let me see if I can find it. Some of you probably, if you're working in social work, you've probably read some of the work that Brene Brown has done, where she talks about guilt versus shame. And I want to read from a local Indigenous leader here on the West Coast, named Ian Kalas-Caplet. Sometimes when we share like this, we feel anger, and then we also feel guilt or shame, especially if we have settler ancestry, or if we are benefiting in any way off of other bodies, which everybody is, because everybody has some form of privilege. If you're ambulatory, if you can walk, you're benefiting on the backs of people who can't walk, who don't have access to things. If you can hear, you're benefiting on the backs of people who are part of the deaf community. We all have our positions, right? So when that guilt wakes up in us, what Ian says is guilt is the worst foundation to build alliances on, as it is a fickle feeling. I'm going to continue, but I want to say I also kind of think he means shame, and we'll talk about the difference in a sec. We can rationalize so much with our brains, which can lead us far from what our hearts tell us is not right. To those who are allying or supporting out of guilt, it's important that you work through the guilt. Deny it as a motivating force. I don't totally agree with that about guilt. We'll talk about that. But shame, absolutely deny it as a motivating force. Or refuse it altogether. Believe it or not, it isn't about you. It's about justice against genocide and a battle for the health and future of everything in creation. If you feel guilt from what you are learning, or if the emotion that comes up for you seems to be about guilt, step aside from it and realize that it is not guilt that you should be feeling. It is outrage. It is outrage that you have been so completely deceived and manipulated that you are only now learning the truth. You are only now becoming aware and awake to the crimes against Indigenous peoples here, and I will add, everywhere on planet Earth. The learning that you are getting should not stop at outrage either, because there is hope to be found in learning something new. That new knowledge has the power to transform the entirety of who you are for the better. And that, in my opinion, is the essence of true education. That is also the transformation needed to stop this abusive and genocidal relationship, to enter into one of respect and balance that sees the future of all things and peoples possible. We need the end of guilt and the beginning of hope. For that to happen, you have to know and understand the depth of the deceptions and manipulations. Many have such knowledge, but I also warn you, it won't be easy, and it won't be comfortable, and it won't be immediate, but I guarantee it will be worth it. So, guilt versus shame. What's the difference? Anybody?
Well, the way Brené Brown explains it is guilt is more, I did something bad, whereas shame is, I am bad.
Yes, thank you
More
so much.
Oh.
Exactly, thank you. That is what Brené Brown says, and I feel like it resonates for me. Guilt has a purpose. Guilt tells us when we've made a mistake, we've done something to hurt someone. It tells us when we need to change our behavior, and it can be a propelling force. There's a difference between guilt and white guilt or supremacist guilt, which sometimes leads to like volunteerism or missionary work. That's not the point. Let's not go and save people. That's not the point. The point is to examine our behavior, examine where we benefit from systems, all of us, where we benefit from systems, and to trouble that benefit, like to challenge it within our own lives whenever possible. Because whatever space, sometimes it's scary to take up space and say that's racist to someone, or to say we're not going to stand for this anymore, because we'll lose some of our benefit sometimes. But whatever we lose is a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of the people who have to experience daily. That's all it is. It's a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. Whatever burden I take on to a struggle that doesn't belong to me is a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. And whenever someone takes on some of my burden, in the places where I have burden, with the places where I'm oppressed, I feel a little bit more liberated every time, you know? As long as, of course, they're doing it in a way that is respectful of me and respects my leadership in that position, right? Because white savior or savior guilt it's going to come. It's not just whiteness, any kind of like somebody's going to like save you, because that's always going to be annoying. Not just annoying, it can even be part of the problem. In fact, it can be literally the problem. That's why colonization exists. That's why boarding schools and residential schools existed, is because of saviorism, right? Part of why. So, shame, I am bad, Brené Brown. In order to be an effective leader, you must be willing to publicly fail. And it's not just as a leader. In order for us to challenge systems of supremacy and oppression, in order for us to challenge colonialism, we have to be willing to make mistakes, right? We might say the wrong thing. We might do the wrong thing. That's scary. We have to be willing to go, oh, I said the wrong thing. Thank you for telling me. instead of getting our defenses up, right? Thank you for telling me I didn't realize. And we have to be willing to not to be forgiven. Not trying to get the person who we've hurt to forgive us. We have to learn to forgive ourselves when we fuck up, right? Because it's not their job to absolve us of that guilt or that pain. It's our job to change our behavior moving forward and to learn. And unfortunately, it is always on the backs of people who are already harmed. That's the reality. And we can keep trying to not do that. That's what we can continue to do. Your comfort zone, where the magic happens. I know it's just cheesy little meme, but it's real. Connection is why we are here. And I think it was Denise, you said how connected you felt. I think you said that during, like, after. How many people felt more connected after our circle? Right? Connection is why we exist. We are hardwired for it. We cannot survive without connection as infants. So our entire nervous system is created for it. And that's where trauma comes from, is something happens and we don't feel connected. And then the trauma forms in our nervous system, right? Something bad can happen to us and have that connection, and it might not turn into trauma in our bodies, right? We need connection. Shame unravels connection, and the colonial system and the supremacist systems know this. They know that shame unravels connection. And empathy, as Brené Brown puts it, is the antidote to shame through her research. Empathy, and through all of we know that already. We know it in our bones, right? Empathy is the ability to listen deeply to another's story, which is why I ask for people to share their stories at the beginning, because it creates if we don't share, we don't have the opportunity for empathy. But that takes an immense amount of courage, which we'll get to. The ability to listen deeply to another's story and to connect with their feelings. And in order to experience connection, we must be willing to be vulnerable. And vulnerability, according to Brené again, is both the core of shame, fear, and our struggle for worthiness. And it is also the birthplace of joy, belonging, and love. Vulnerability is emotional risk, exposure, uncertainty, to let ourselves be seen, to be honest. And in order to be truly vulnerable, we must be courageous. To be afraid, but to do it anyway. Courage comes from the Latin word heart, to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. Vulnerability is our most accurate measurement of courage. It is not weakness. And that measure, or that message, is profoundly dangerous. So in our daily lives, people are always asking, like, how do I put this into practice? How do I decolonize? How do I re-indigenize? How do I participate? How do I show support? The first thing is we need to listen. And we need to create spaces to listen. Create spaces that are safe to share. And we need to find within our hearts and our spirits and our bodies and our minds the courage to share, right? And we can't, those of us, when we have a marginalized identity, we can't be expected to go first, right? So we have to find the places where we have privilege and be honest about those privileges. So I'm a light-skinned Indigenous person. I look like a white person. And so I have access to spaces. That access can be taken away at any moment when people find out who I am, when I have certain perspectives that don't fit. I experience harm constantly, but I have access in ways that other people don't. People who are brown, people who grew up on res, I have these accesses, you know? It's my job to use those places of access to trouble my own privilege. But also I need to protect myself as a person who's also marginalized. I need to make sure that I'm protecting myself, and I don't have to always speak up about my own suffering. I need to speak up about the ways that I'm benefiting. It's my job. If we're really going to do this, and we have to do it in our families. Those ones are hard because families might not be safe, right? For so many of us. And you have to weigh, you have to balance, like, am I safe? And like, really, am I safe enough? Like, who would really not be safe here? Those are things to consider and to question. So before I continue, I'm just aware of time. I'm thinking about the time and I know we're running out. So I just want to make sure I get through enough. But I want to ask if there's anything anybody wants to ask or to say about what was just spoken.
I just have one little thing, if I may. So if we remembered when the explorer came to the new land, I bet nobody knows why Indigenous people became known as Indians. The explorer were on the way to India and they got lost and they got here. Imagine if the Indigenous community had said, turned them away, but they welcomed them.
Exactly.
And by welcoming them, they, but this is what I wanted to share. Maybe at another session we can discuss it because this has been really strong for me. I was so ashamed that the churches became in compliance with the corporate by telling Africans that, yes, you are less than human. By telling Indigenous people, yes, you are less than human. And I, someone that I believe in my spiritual life, let me tell you, I think, God, it must be, in despair because of what's going on. And again, I have to say, we're all human. Why would mostly the Catholic Church, engage with these corporate people by going into the community of Black community, telling them, yes, you are less human than white? I think maybe at some point, I will, we should have that discussion with, religious leader because it's still happening. It's still happening, telling our community that we deserve to be treated that way because, and I'll just finish with this. After we spent almost a whole year begging the city of Worcester to treat Latino and Black students with the same humanity as white students, and we never got a chance to discuss it with the former superintendent. And then one of her friends was quoted in the Worcester magazine telling her, don't worry about those children because they come from families that are spiritually poor. Oh so, gosh. My friends keep telling me, Ruth, stop fighting them because if that's how they see us, we can understand why they treat our children the way they do. So I'm just, I hope that we can, at some point begin to look at, because many are community, and let me tell you, I was in Cuba and I went to a spiritual event. And this is how in Africa, the African community used to, speak to their God. How can they take that away from us? How can they take that away from us?
They can't take it. It's there. It hasn't been taken. It's in our blood memory. They tried, but we are remembering.
Yes.
They can't take that connection away. They can't. They tried.
Yeah.
Ruth, I just want to say thank you. Your voice is so important.
Thank you.
What you have to say is so important. I really thank you. Would all of you be willing for me to share I have a Prezi that I was going to do, but we don't have time. But can I share some of it? I hate to switch the vibe, but I want to share some of it. There's a few things that I'd like to share. So thank you. And I just have to open it. I'm very bad at this part. I'm working on it. Okay, I think I've got that. And now zoom and share. Okay. Can you see that? I don't know what I just opened though. Oh my goodness, y'all. Oh,
Yes, we can see it. It looks great.
I'm an elder millennial and this is just like, I'm not good at this.
It looks awesome though.
Thank you. I've got something in my way and I don't know how to close it. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay. So I want to introduce a principle, Wakotawin, which is interconnection, kinship, relationship, interdependence, not independence. And I really wanted to bring that word in because when I think of the US, I think of Independence Day, and I'm just like that is so indicative of like a loss of connection and a cultural ideology that keeps us separate, and it's designed to do that. So my Wakotawin is living in harmony together. And I'm not going to say the sentence because I haven't learned it yet, but it means let us all wake up tomorrow and work together in a good way. Forgive me, this is just my own. I'm just going to move through this because I want to get to this. Wakotawin means we are all related. Everything is in relationship. Human existence is embedded in relationships. That is Cree natural law, which is the only real law, right? That is law in many Indigenous communities around the world. That's deeply known. And when we forget or ignore that we are all interconnected and all related, this makes it easier to harm others. And it also makes it easier to harm ourselves. There are 3 principles of Wakotawin. Pastamawin, which means breaking relationships. That's what is happening with colonization. What has happened from the very beginning. It's a broken relationship. And the second principle is Ochawin, consequences. The consequences of those broken relationships is what we're living with right now with climate disaster, with all of the systems of oppression that are rising up at the moment. But the third principle of Wakotawin is Kweyasgastasawin, and that means setting things right. Here in Canada, we have this idea where we're talking about reconciliation, but the truth is there's nothing to reconcile because the relationship was broken from the start. Where I live, there are no treaties, there are no agreements. Canada is actually illegal. Like it is illegal and illegal occupation. But where I'm from, the treaties have been broken. So even though there are agreements, those treaties were never respected in the first place. And also because as Indigenous people, we do not have the concept in our language of ownership. Everything is relationship. There is no resource. It's relationship. That tree is not a resource for me. That tree is my grandfather or my cousin. What I breathe in is what the trees breathe out. And what the trees breathe in is what I breathe out. We are all in relationship with one another and we have responsibilities to each other. I feel like colonial culture is about what can I get, right? And indigenizing things, re-indigenizing culture is about what am I responsible for? Considered together, these 3 Cree words outline a legal process that allows for the just resolution of injurious action. The word reconciliation does not. If reconciliation is the action of making one view or belief compatible with the other, it's for settlers. But Kweyasgastasawin setting things right, consequences. That's for everyone. How do we take responsibility and accountability for what is happening? Not what happened in the past, it's happening now. Indigenous people, people of color, people from around the world who are experiencing colonial violence. It's happening today, not yesterday. So people who speak different languages pay attention to different things. I'm just going to skip some of this. So if you speak a different language, you might be familiar with, like, you can't translate certain concepts into English because they don't exist in English. That's why residential schools and boarding schools existed in the first place, was to take our language and our way of thinking away from us. You kidnap children and put them in another community in a school that they're not allowed to speak their language, and they're tortured if they do, and die. Like 50%, I think 50%, there was a 50% death rate. There's thousands of Indigenous bodies being found on residential school sites right now, children's bodies. This is real. And the reason that we think the way we do is because it's been planted there. It's been planted there by force. So how might I think differently? What thoughts do I wish to create? Oh man, now I'm going to have to go through this. I'm sorry for skipping through so quickly. I'm going to have to skip this, but if you're able to record this and read it later, go ahead. So from the documentary Schooling the World, I learned about this picture, which is basically like the schools going across the Americas. So this is the plains here. And these are Indigenous people like running from all the settlers. They're being like chased off of their lands, literally. And this was American Progress. This painting was called American Progress. So, and this white woman carrying either a Bible, Amy was saying, maybe it's a Bible, or a school book, chasing Indigenous people away. Kill the Indian, save the child. That's a direct quote. Let everything that is Indian within you die. That's from the Carlisle boarding school. Like, it's not even a secret that it's genocide. No one is going to give you the education you need to overthrow them. If you wanted to change an entire culture in one generation, how would you do it? You would change the way it educates its children. How much time have I got? 5 minutes. Okay, we're gonna get through this. I'm so sorry but I think people's voices were way more important than this earlier. So some of you, if you're in social work, are familiar with Maslow's so-called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is actually appropriated from the Blackfoot Nation. So Maslow studied with the Blackfoot Nation, and he literally took this concept and specifically said he wanted it to be more capitalist. That's literally what he said. So he talks about physiological needs at the base, safety needs on top of that, belongingness and love, esteem needs, need to know and understand, aesthetic needs, self-actualization, transcendence. So like, you need to be able to breathe first and like eat first. That's the perspective, but it's very individualistic. It's individual rights, privileged, one lifetime scope of analysis. It's just one person. There's no consideration of other generations. Whereas the original is actually not a pyramid, it's a teepee. And teepees are not actually pyramids, they're circles spiraling upwards. And it doesn't start with physiological needs. It starts with self-actualization because the connection in the community is already there. We don't have to worry about these needs. They've already been attended to by the ancestors. We are constantly in relationship with our ascendants and our descendants. So So if we start at self-actualization, which is the top of his pyramid, we start there, we can go into community actualization. The whole community can become something together because the individuals are already cared for, are already taken care of and caring for each other. And what ends up happening is we can think about cultural perpetuity. We can think about the next generations. In my culture, we think of the 7 generations before and the 7 generations to come. We are responsible for them. We're responsible for healing the trauma of the 7 generations before, and we're responsible for setting the foundation for the next 7 generations to come. So this is an expansive concept of time and multiple dimensions of reality. We're not just this one individualized section. This is from Cindy Blackstock, I wanted to make sure to say. Indigenous ways value the collective. When our communities are on a decolonial path, our practices ensure that our children have the knowledge to be self-actualized. Western ideologies break family and community ties. We now must heal the individual before we can return to the collective way of thinking, which will return our sense of belonging. Thus, in my way of understanding, this is that Maslow's theory is only half of it. While of course there's value in what Maslow put together and appropriated, it's just a tiny section. It's not the whole story. So how can we transform the story that we're all stuck inside of? And I'm going to stop sharing so I can see your faces again. There's still more to say. But one of the things I was thinking about, because this is about, it's over Thanksgiving for you is coming up. We had ours already, which happens on your Columbus Day, by the way, which is kind of funny. I looked up the meaning of turkey medicine, because I feel like it's really relevant here. It's giveaway. Turkey is actually thought to be the giveaway eagle or south eagle of many Indigenous nations. The philosophy of giveaway is practiced by many communities. Simply stated, it is the deep and abiding recognition of the sacrifices of both self and others. People in modern day society, colonial society, who have many times more than they need, should study the noble turkey who sacrifices itself so that we may live. In turkey's death, we have our life. Honor turkey. Spectators unfamiliar with the cultural phenomenon of the potlatch or giveaway ceremony are often mystified by it. A tribal member may gladly give away all he or she owns and do without in order to help the people. In present-day urban life, we are taught to acquire and get ahead. The person with the most toys wins the game. In some cultures, no one can win the game unless the whole of the people's needs are met. A person who claims more than his or her share is looked upon as selfish or crazy or both. The poor, the aged, and the feeble have honor. Crazy is problematic, by the way. I just wanted to make sure to say that word. The person who gives away the most and carries the burdens of the people is one of the most respected. So this is not out of some sense of self-righteous moralism or religious guilt, the giveaway. Help and sustenance are given by turkey out of the realization that all life is sacred. It's knowing that the Great Spirit resides within all people. It is an acknowledgement that what you do for others, you do for yourself. Turkey medicine rests in true ego enlightenment. Doing unto others and feeding the people is the message of all true spiritual systems. Depending on how turkey is aspected in, okay, anyway, that's something else. But all of this to say, the antithesis to turkey medicine is Black Friday. That's something important for us to be aware of, to consider, that Thanksgiving, the way that Thanksgiving is, it's totally different in the US from Canada. Like, we don't do all the feather headdresses. I mean, some people might, but it's not really a thing that people tend to do. It's just not the same. And even here, I don't really practice celebrating Thanksgiving in that way. But my invitation to you is, if you are going to celebrate Thanksgiving this year, think about these things that we talked about today. If you are a settler, bring this to your family. Talk about this. Talk about the reality. And remember that whatever burden you take on is a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of what Indigenous people are dealing with on a daily basis. And for Indigenous people here, I just want to say, I love you. And thank you, for real. Thank you. Real thank you. Not Thanksgiving American style. Thank you. Real thank you. There's so much more to say, but I don't want to be the last person to speak. So
I know, Anna, and we do have to give the Zoom. We have to submit the Zoom, and I'm so sad we have to do that because this is so powerful and amazing, and I'm so grateful to you. I learned so much that is definitely going to shake up my life. And everyone shared so much. It was just absolutely so beautiful. Thank you.
I also made a reading list. Thank you so much. I made a reading list last night, and I don't know. Amy, are you able to share it somewhere?
I'll share all the stuff on the Facebook event page and on the Facebook. And I know you have so much, and people have been asking, can we get some of those materials? Can you tell? So yes, we'll share it all. And I'm so grateful to get to share Anna with all of you, because you can see, wow. So beautiful.
You're all so beautiful. I feel so thankful. Thank you so much. And you can contact me through annasoole.com is my website. I'm pretty active on Facebook, a little bit less active on Insta, and not at all active on Twitter. annasoole.com if you want to check that out. I have a pretty fun to engage with website. And I also have a resource in the blog section that is called, I think, decolonization or something for Indigenous solidarity. So it's good for settlers to take a look, or for Indigenous folks to share with settlers.
And some people asked, we have the Worcester Addresses Childhood Trauma Facebook page and website. We'll also have the stuff in the links. That's where it's been located. And again, thank you so much. I hate to even end. Why stop the love fest?
Do you have a copy of the chat? Because I haven't been able to look at it, and I really want to read it. I don't know if we can.
I can save you that, and then and then when we get the link back from Clark, it has the transcript and all the stuff. So you'll get to see every piece of it. The chat was really good. I'm glad you're going to get to see that.
Can I ask if there's any, do we have to close this second?
I think we do. I think Lori needs the web spot. Okay. Sorry, I hate to close. Go check out Anna's website. Check out the Facebook page. Thank you all so much for being amazing and courageous and beautiful. Thank you.
Don't be afraid to friend me also if you want more resources. I share a lot. So
she's an amazing friend. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All my relations.